In the beginning, long ago.
That is not how we're going to start this. Ben, take it away.
If it weren't for the beliefs of the ancient Egyptian people, there probably wouldn't be any reason to visit Egypt today. The tombs of the kings wouldn't call the names of the archaeologists. The pyramids wouldn't attract tourists from all around the world. And of course, historians would find no reason to research the rich history of the people and their theology, and what it was.
The Egyptian people worshipped over 2,000 different deities and lived their lives more dedicated to their beliefs than the people of any other dead religion before that. They followed cults of magic and taboo rituals that they believed would serve their gods and continue to bring order to the universe.
But did they go to Sunday school?
Ryan, I highly doubt that they went to Sunday school.
Alright.
Now that we're done with Ryan's very, very silly questions, let's get into what actually matters and what this project's all about. Gods, goddesses, who they were and what they were known for. Let's start off with the great and powerful god Ra, the sun god. He kind of looks like this. Ra is the king of the gods, and he's most important because they saw the sun rising as the creation of the world, and they believed that Ra created the world.
In earlier beliefs, there is a debatable king of the gods, Amun, who the Egyptian people apparently became bored with and fused with Ra.
Now, of course, we won't go into too much detail, but the next on the list is Osiris. He is the god of the dead, and the underworld, of course. But he was a farmer at first, like all gods of the dead and the underworld, because he taught the Egyptians how to farm.
Seth, a god that you'll hear about in a little bit, hated his brother Osiris, so much in fact that he made a coffin for him, a beautiful, beautiful coffin, and he dared Osiris to see if he could fit into it. Osiris, not being the smartest of all gods, went for that challenge, and when he was in there, Seth pushed him in, sealed the coffin, and threw the coffin into the Nile, where Osiris then died and became the god of the dead.
Now, let's talk about Seth, that darn jackal-looking god. Seth, very quickly, is the god of desert and of storms and violence. Coincidence that he wanted to kill his brother? I think not! He is the enemy of prosperous crops, so the Egyptians tried to please him. Seth wasn't always bad, but in most cases, he's what you might call evil.
Thoth is another very important god, for he is the god of wisdom, and he counts the stars, so he seems like he's pretty smart. Stud muffin.
That's right. Thoth was the recorder of knowledge, all knowledge known to men. Just a quick picture of Thoth. His head was the head of an ibis, which if you don't know what that is, that's kind of like a stork. Thoth carried a book of 2 spells, one which provided the ability to talk to anything that's living, and the other gave the ability for anyone to choose between life and death for another person.
I want to quickly talk about Ma'at. She was the goddess of truth and wisdom.
To get wisdom, you need both truth and justice in your decisions. That actually makes sense, Egyptians. Smart thinking, putting Thoth with Ma'at. They're a good pair. Ma'at was important to the afterlife, so you'll probably hear about her in a later section of this video.
Another important god was Anubis. He was the god of embalming. He took care of the dead when Osiris died. Remember him?
Osiris had a father named Geb, who was the god of earth and other ground stuff.
I'll bet he got grounded all the time.
Often depicted with Geb was his wife Nut, or Newt, depending on who you are, that they've been pronounced both ways. She was considered to be the goddess of the sky, and was thought to live in trees.
Not lived in trees.
Alright, this whole pun thing it's spinning out of control.
Some historians believed that the Egyptians people believed that all the gods were part of one big system, like a single mega god.
Go, go, Power Rangers. Go, go, Power Rangers.
Anyway, as you can see by the picture, there's this dude in between Nut and Geb. His role was to keep the earth and sky separate.
Why? Just why?
We can't forget this sexy beast, Tauret, who is a goddess of childbirth. Honestly, I think I'd like to keep this one away from children.
Nun, one of the oldest gods, was the god of chaos, and he was thought to exist before anything else did, before even Ra came in and told him what was up.
I get it. You know, the sun goes up.
That was a good slap. Very good. I applaud you. The Egyptians followed a whole boatload of rituals, which include the following: consecration, initiation, commemoration, celebration, invocation, evocation, and
Vacation,
Exhortation,
ordination,
activation,
civilization,
transfiguration,
westernization,
illumination,
exemplification,
taxation without representation,
overestimation,
glorification,
mummification,
excavation,
decoagulation,
counterinterpretation,
constellation,
hopscotchination,
calculation,
minimization,
legal separation. I don't even think that's a word.
revitalization.
okay, yes, all of those probably did apply.
I like this part because they did magic stuff.
Magification?
I don't even think that's a word.
Well, I like it.
Nope, it's not a word.
Well, it is now, because I performed wordification.
Oh, what do you know? It's right there.
Ryan, that's a phone book.
Well, that's one weird name.
Each magical ritual served one of four purposes: to pacify, to grow, to shield, or to destroy. And each of those can apply to many different contexts, whether it was to shield someone politically or physically, whether to grow a plant or to grow in wisdom.
Or if your heart was 2 sizes too small.
Rituals were magical performances used to manipulate the natural forces, kind of like The Last Airbender. And they did these in order to worship their gods, or to make specific requests.
There were 2 types of people that could perform magic: magicians and priests. But priests could only perform magic that served specifically the gods.
The people would perform these rituals like clockwork, with the most important morning rituals preceding the midday and evening rituals. Like a clock. Get it?
Their priests would also perform nocturnal sacrifices in order to repel the curses of the netherworld, where the Egyptian people believed that demons came from.
Most of today's American Christians only go to church once a week. That's 1/35 the amount of time that the people who practiced a religion that we thought is absolutely ridiculous spent worshiping their gods.
Boo.
The Egyptian people also believed in magical.
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 Magical
texts.
These texts could be interpreted and performed by the people.
If you were high enough up in the hierarchy, you could go to your local library and check out magic books and do magic-y stuff.
People also believed that oracles could give divine advice to people, and it would lead them into the right direction.
Ritualization.
How did the religion of the Egyptians affect their day-to-day life? That depended on what part of Egypt you lived in.
The area that they lived in changed what gods they worshipped. If someone were in one area, they could worship some gods, but not others. But then if you went to a completely different area in Egypt, you could worship a whole different group of gods.
Of course, the main gods such as Ra and Osiris were worshipped everywhere, but gods such as Nekbet were not. Location, location, location.
The other main day-to-day idea was that each god or goddess had to have their own ritual or offering. Ra's offering could not be the same as Osiris's, nor could Set's be the same as Anubis's. Sisis's. Actually, what's interesting about this is statues were anointed with perfume and offered food as spiritual nourishment. And a lot of historians have said that where the offerings come from are actually taxes from the common people.
Man, I wish I was a god. Free food? That sounds great. But in all seriousness, if these rituals did not happen, the Egyptians believed that the gods would punish them.
Now, as much as I know that you want to know more about the ancient Egyptian religion and how it affected their day-to-day life, I'm sorry to tell you there really isn't much more. Historians are coming up with conflicting ideas on how it served them, and so it's very difficult to come to an understanding of who did what.
And this brings us to one of the biggest questions religion tries to answer. What is life like after death? The Egyptians believed in life after death, and they also believed that how they lived their daily lives would determine how they would be judged by the gods after they died.
There was a point in time when only pharaohs could reach the afterlife, which was a land called the Field of Reeds, and was even split by a heavenly Nile River. Osiris, the god of the dead, however, made it possible for people to reach the afterlife.
The way to get to the afterlife was one of lifelong deeds, with a couple of more requirements before the ride on Ra's boats. The land of the Field of Reeds could be taken. There was only one that had to be done during your life, and that one was pretty simple. Your name had to be written down somewhere. Most people had a cartouche, which was a nameplate for the coffin of last resort.
The other requirement is that you need your physical body embalmed. The reason for this is they believed your soul needed a place to go in the afterlife, and what better place to go than home sweet home? If you didn't have your name written on your embalmed body, your soul would get lost and never to be found again.
This would take you down the hallway to that room where the test was going to happen. Mott would then take your heart, and whether it's good or bad or however you lived your life during the time that you were alive, she takes it and places it on her scale, and the scale represents justice. On the other end, she places a feather, and that also represents justice. And all of this happened right in front of the god Osiris and the path to his kingdom, so to speak. After the heart was proven good, and all the other requirements were taken care of, you were allowed to take a boat to the Field of Reeds.
Speaking of fields, the Egyptians had an interesting view of the earth. To them, it was this flat surface, stretching out as far as the eye could see. The ground itself was personified by the god Geb, and the sky, also known as Nut, was arched over him, or in the trees.
Wait. Did you just pun again?
Maybe.
You are horrible.
Anyway, something belonged under the underworld and even under the undersky. It was this chaos that existed before the world was formed.
You can think of it in a similar way as we know the layers of the earth lie. First comes the sky, like the topsoil. Following that comes the earth itself. Burrowing deeper, you'll get to the underworld and the undersky. Finally, you hit the chaos, which is also called Nu, and would kind of be like the core of our earth. Mainly because you'd probably die.
Each day, Ra would traverse the sky as the sun, then continue on through into the underworld undersky to a place called Duat, where you would go when you died to reach the Fields of Reeds. Then each morning, he would be reborn into the sky to do his daily travel again.
The Egyptians believed that there were three different kinds of beings that lived in the cosmos of the universe. The first was the gods. The second was dead people who kind of just were there. And the third was, of course, us, who we just kind of wanted to be like the gods.
Oh, that makes sense.
Good, because we're not doing that again. Didn't I just say we weren't gonna do that again, Scurvy?
Ben, your efforts are valiant, but trying to stop us from having fun during this extremely informative presentation is like trying to catch the wind.
This was definitely fun. Just a pain to look up, and a pain to work with you guys.
I mean, look at everything we covered. We just went from going over the gods and goddesses like the all-important Ra and Mot, not to mention some of the other important but lesser deities. We also touched on their daily life, even though not much is known.
We hit up their rituals, telling you all about their crazy sacrificing life, and we finished by talking about their beliefs in the afterlife and that funky cosmos.
And you all annoyed the crap out of me.
There's a word we forgot from the earlier rant: crapification.
Yay!
Dear Lord,